Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV and welcome to this UFO Disclosure 2022. Steve Bassett on the hearings. Now this is a bit weird, very weird in fact, because for the first time since 2015 when I started this particular series, for the first time ever, I distinctly predicted in January of this year that 2022 would not be the year of disclosure. For the first time ever, I actually said it probably would not. This is why I call it the year of the nudge. I called the previous video in this series the only other UFO disclosure video I've done this year, which is, I actually said I thought we would get lots of hints, we get lots of suggestions and things like that. I thought because of Biden and because of Trump being out and things like that, and because lots of other things happening in the world, which I do explain, go to the description box. There's a background link. I didn't think we would get disclosure this year. And what happens? All hell breaks loose. We got loads of UFO videos released, loads of video movies, documentaries released on UFOs. We have hearings, the first hearings in over 50 years in the US Congress. We have all kinds of other things which I've listed in previous videos, not parts of the series, but in the live streams I've done. And we have Steve Bassett coming on. I've got in touch with Steve Bassett and recorded an interview in which he distinctly says, you know, this is likely to be, we're likely to see disclosure within a few months. Now, Steve Bassett always says that, doesn't he? However, you know what? This time I bloody believe him. For the first time ever, I actually do believe him. We got Ryan Robbins, UFO Jesus, reckoning it'll happen within the next 2 years. And so I think it makes the previous video in this series rather ironic, doesn't it? Still, never before have I wanted to be proved wrong so much. Anyway, you've seen a live stream about the hearings. I'll put a link in the description box to the live stream on the hearings, even though that's not a part of this series, where we discuss that on the live stream, and you can hear what I say at the time, before I spoke to Steve this was, and indeed what I talk about with you guys, the viewers. So you can watch that if you want, if you haven't seen it yet. And then you can watch my interview with Steve. Now I'll now present you with that immediately, so we don't have to wait any longer. So let's bring Steve Bassett onto the show.
All right, my friend, whenever you're ready.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, listeners to the Hapanwo show on Hapanwo Radio and any viewers on Hapanwo TV, welcome to the program. I've got my old mate Stephen Bassett back again. Hello, Steve. How are you?
Ben, it's good to be with you again as always.
Likewise, mate. Likewise. Always great. I've been longing to talk to you for ages, actually. Because so much has happened, and we only spoke. It was actually less than a year ago we last had a conversation, and everything's transformed since then. Actually, it was September. It was even way less than a year. It was September last year. And the world appears to have transformed in the UFO area. And it's unbelievable, I never imagined all this would happen. I did say that at some point because we discussed the patterns in the revelations that happened since 2017. And I said at some point, probably in autumn, something's going to break. But I mean, it feels like we're so close to a massive breakthrough. It really does. It feels I'm so close. I can feel it. What do you reckon?
For those of us who are aware of the issue, following it pretty closely, it's not hard to feel that way. The one thing I can say with certainty is this: there is no going back now. There's never going to be a regression from this issue. There's never going to be another 1969 when, in a rather elaborate project, wherein there may have been, likely were, some coordination between members of Congress and the Department of Defense, the Air Force, and so forth, even the CIA, the record of which I'm sure was all burnt after reading. They concocted a plan to essentially try to extricate the government out from under the public's intense interest in the phenomena, which had been building through the 50s into the 60s, You had the very substantial sighting in Michigan, which was not handled well by Project Blue Book and Alan Hynek, resulting in Congressman Gerald Ford. He was the, I think, assistant minority leader, but he was a powerful member of Congress. Gerald Ford said, we need to have a hearing on this. And so they had one in 1966. I think it was a half a day, 4 witnesses, legitimate witnesses. Nice. 2 years later, they had the 68 hearing, which was also about a half a day. That was the famous one in which Dr. James McDonald testified at. There were some presentations, not a big deal. One day, it's all done. And then shortly after that, we learned about the Condon report. It's going to be coming out, and it came out and basically said, there's nothing here. We looked at it, there's nothing here, which the Air Force then immediately seized upon to say, look, I think it's time to shut down Project Blue Book. We've looked at 12,000 sightings. Man, there's 701 that we can't explain, but we can explain all the rest, which is not quite true. And so they shut that down. And meanwhile, over at the NICAP, the National Investigation Committee on Air Phenomena, created by and run for years by Major Keogh, which had thousands of members, including some CIA people on the board. Literally, I mean, they were known CIA people on the board, meaning it was really had high level people and a lot of scientists and so forth. And they, of course, were causing all kinds of problems because they kept coming up with legitimate statements and explanations and inquiry. They were doing what you're supposed to do, which the government did not want.
Kehoe himself wrote the book, "The Flying Saucers Are Real." It's a pretty unequivocal title, and
yeah, he wrote the book. But a lot of people don't realize his biggest contribution was, of course, was NICAP. NICAP was a major problem, and so the board came together and threw him out and took over, and essentially shut down the operation, shut down all the outer offices and so forth, until all that was left was a central group of board members, of which a number were CIA. And they just, whatever money was coming in or was in the bank account, they just paid themselves. And then they went away completely. That was 1969, 68.
That's a long time ago, isn't it? Yeah, it's a hell of a long time ago.
That is never going to happen again. Right?
Good, because it was a whitewash. I mean, I've looked into the history of the whole thing, and it's pretty obvious that all those years from 47 to 69 that they were investigating, it was not really an investigation. I mean, Hynek himself he was radicalized over this by weight of evidence. He originally thought it would just be like a summer sabbatical he'd be doing for a little while, then he'd go back to his old job at astronomy. But he ended up doing this for like 22 years, and at the end of it, it's like anyone who looks at the evidence honestly comes away saying, no, of course these things are real.
I know.
And in terms of statistics, I mean, at the end, I think it was actually 32% of sightings that really remained unexplained, if I remember correctly. It was a large proportion anyway.
So essentially, in 2017, we turned toward we turned toward the stretch. We went into the stretch of this race, right? Final stretch, and we're heading for the finish line. That started in 2017, in my view, with the two articles that appeared in the New York Times, December 16 and 17. For 16 was on the internet, then 17 was in the print edition. I'd like to get a copy of that front page.
Oh God, yeah. I remember where I was. Everyone seems to remember where they was when that story broke. I was actually doing a video with Miles at his studio in Devizes. It was like, what? Have you heard just what's happened? I said, what? Yeah, the video. If you want to see the video, it's on there. The expression on my face is amazing.
Yeah, I was in, 17. I was in the UK. I was in London.
Oh.
Right? I'd been in London since April. I ended up not getting back until I think early February of 2018, and so I was off the field when I was out of the stadium when the Grand Slam home run was hit, when the winning goal was scored, right? And it was it was a problem for me because I really was not how would you say participating in that time as I normally would have. And it's taken me quite a while to get back to a position where I feel like I'm directly involved as much as possible. Nevertheless, that was a huge deal. So, since then, we have been on a 5-year process leading to disclosure with no chance of it turning around, no chance of being shut down. It has been a bumpy ride and much longer than we thought because of the developments going on in the country and ultimately around the world. This was a very unusual time in American history, in American politics. Unprecedented stuff was happening. Huge distractions like that, but important, certainly democracy. And then as we were starting to get used to these unprecedented political developments, a virus turned up, which I believe, thanks to the fact that over the last several decades, the world collectively has spent uncountable trillions of dollars in adjusted for inflation on war, defense, offense, intelligence, weapons, the whole 9 yards. Untold trillions of dollars were spent on that, so that when a really very significant dangerous virus turned up in early 2020, we didn't have enough hand sanitizer. We didn't have enough masks. We did not have enough ventilators. We did not have or a proper plan. And when it comes to war, we plan it to death. We did not have the ability to deal with it, though we did have lots of nuclear submarines. And as a result, the world has been turned upside down. Economies have been set back. Estimated 14 million people are dead because of uncounted millions. Of course, how many are sick? It's a pretty big number. It's probably approaching 1 billion at this point, because obviously they haven't been able to clock all of that in. The suffering and the loss is just staggering. But the political situation is still bad, so bad, that a very substantial number of people have been led to believe by absolute insidious politicians that it was not a big deal.
Well, I lost a friend, Gareth Davis, who does Mindset podcasts. He died. I mean, that's on the issue of defense and the amount of money spent on defense. The US has always had a very heavy armor to carry around, and the Soviet Union was the same before it collapsed. It was spending so much on defense, and it was neglecting domestic issues. Yeah. But I think it's interesting. We've come through to the other side of this now, and the UFO ET issue is still paramount now. It's returned with a vengeance.
It's not paramount. You know what's paramount?
What is the war in Ukraine?
Threat of nuclear war is paramount. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So we got through. We go through years of political upheaval, which continues to this day. But I mean, we suffered through that, and then the pandemic showed up. We didn't have the resources to deal with it, and we dealt with it badly. And not just the United States, but around the world. Those trillions of dollars might have come in handy there. We might have had more hand sanitizer available at the time, or more masks. And then we deal with that for a couple of years. Again, all of this is slowing down the process of what I call the disclosure process.
I think it slowed down everything, didn't it, Steve?
Slowed everything down, including the disclosure process. And then things start to pick up a little bit. We start to see some progress. I'm just starting to get optimistic. When an aging, dying autocrat who has lost every iota of morality that he ever had, if he had any, decides that his swan song, his epitaph, his exit from this world must be marked by the wholesale slaughter of innocent people with the most advanced weapons in the world, he will have Ukraine, even if it's nothing but a pile of smoking rubble, which will go down in history as one of the most evil acts of any leader ever. He is going to sit in hell with a lot of very well-known people, Stalin, Hitler, and so forth. A bit of a minor version of them, but he's doing what he can. All right, that happens. All right, so in that case, some of these trillions of dollars of weapons have come in handy, finally, because now we're shipping them to Ukraine to fight a proxy war. So all of this has happened since those 2 New York Times articles. If it wasn't for these developments, we would already be 3 years into the post-disclosure world. 3 years into a world where every human being on this planet knows, in fact, they are not alone and being engaged by other civilizations from other planets right now.
Right. I mean, that's. Do you believe it literally? That put. I mean, I can well believe that it's certainly the COVID pandemic really put a stop. But I mean, would it? Do you believe if the COVID pandemic and the war in Ukraine had not happened from December 2017, how long would it have taken for the actual disclosure announcement? Just goodness, alternative history here. I'm just curious.
Of course. Well, I will say this: yeah, that's a bit of an exaggeration in this regard. The political situation, independent of the pandemic, all right, independent of the Ukraine, was in fact awful, unprecedentedly awful. I think perhaps you can find some comparisons if you go back in the 1800s. Back then, the United States was a bit rough, a bit raw, and of course had a lot of very bad policies, but again, it's had to grow up. So it was so bad that it's possible that the political situation would have prevented what needed to happen. Because what needs to happen and what is happening is the always required bipartisan approach of congressional hearings to take witness testimony is finally coming together. And in 2017, in the first year of the last administration, and going forward, it just wasn't that we didn't have bipartisanship. We had a toxic political environment that frankly would have sunk a lot of other democracies. Ours is still pretty strong, and so we scraped through it. But it was awful beyond measure. And so the idea that those hearings could have taken place in 2018-19, I must admit, probably wouldn't have happened. So my statement was a bit exaggerated to make a point. Now, but that made, as we move towards, how would you say, what's the word I'm looking for? Towards some normalcy.
If such a thing's, I mean,
yeah, but
if
at
such
least
thing's
it's
possible.
stability, some
Yeah.
political stability, as we move towards and literally are we're seeing the potential change of the political arena. Things start to pick up, and that's when the pandemic hits, which then dominates the last year of the last administration, and because it was handled so badly, will continue to dominate the world for some time to come. So in that sense, I guess you could say history closed the door. In other words, very much like what happened to the Indian independence movement from your fine country, the United Kingdom. They were making extremely good progress towards getting independence. They had a big movement going. It was national, had a strong leader in Gandhi, and there were those predicting that, well, we're going to get this done. And then World War II arrives. Okay, another sick sociopathic autocrat steps in. Okay, and the Indian independence movement had to make the very important decision that, and the right decision, that we simply cannot, in any large and complex way, continue to press the British for independence while they're fighting the Axis powers, while they're fighting the Nazis. It simply would be wrong, okay? And so they had to stand down for a good number of years. I'm going to go at least 4. It might have been 5, and then the movement picked up again after the war was over. That's about how long we have been shut out. Oh, I say not shut out, but how long we have had to basically stand down since those articles came out in the New York Times.
It wasn't quite as long.
We're not immune from history. No one is immune from history. No issue, no project, no project of any kind is immune from the power of history.
No, definitely not. But I mean, obviously, the COVID pandemic was not as long as World War II. Quite. World War II was 6 years. It was 39 to 45. Yeah. Interestingly, after the end of World War II, the Indian independence movement, I think it's brushed itself off and got back on its feet very quickly. And in fact, it was in
Right.
47 that there was independence. Ironically, the Indian Civil War was being fought at the time Roswell happened, and a lot of the headlines were actually stolen by the fact that there's 3 million people dead by the end of it. But
Very true.
the point,
Very
yeah,
true.
there may never be a perfect moment to do this, though, Steve. I mean, if we wait for completely calm waters, I'm speaking as if I were a politician now, which I will never be probably, but there may never be a perfect moment to do this, and then may never be completely still waters by which we can set
No, you
sail.
don't. No, you don't wait. You move forward. You move forward. You move forward. You move forward. And then, if history forces you to stand back, you stand back. But you don't wait. I assure you, you don't have that luxury. So, and I have to caution you. Uh, the pandemic is not over. In fact, it's far from over, and it may very well get worse. I just want to caution you in that regard. Again, because we had spent all of our money on nuclear subs and airplanes and bases all over the world, both us and the UK. We did not have the resources. We did not, and because we put all of our wonderful planning into how we're going to plan the next war, the nuclear war, and the gaming this and gaming that, we didn't have a proper plan to deal with this. And so this particular disease has entrenched itself in the world. And this particular disease is not quite like any other, and it's not done with us yet. It still has the power to crash economies. It has the power to come back at any time and really lay waste. And so consequently, as that is unfolding, I'm watching that, and I'm seeing that being handled badly as well. In other words, the human race is just begging nature to just really roll over us like a steamroller. We're just begging. We're standing in front of nature like we're standing in front of a steamroller, and we're going, okay, here we go. Come on. It's not over yet, Ben. I wish it was. So, which is why, but we're in a bit of a lull. Okay, we're in a lull maybe before the storm, which is why we really need to get these hearings now. Okay.
Yeah, of course, yes.
And also because of the war in Ukraine has gotten to kind of a standing situation that could go bad at any moment. But we need to get those hearings done now so that we're over that, and then we can deal with what comes, but in a post-disclosure world. So this is a very critical window. I'm following it very closely, and there's plenty happening, thank goodness. And I'm optimistic we may get it done this year before the election.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I mean, you've often made this point that there'll always be crises that come our way. It could be something natural like a disease or something, or it could be something artificial like a conflict that gets out of hand. But in the pre-disclosure world and the post-disclosure world, these things are very different. And I think you're absolutely right. It's a completely different kettle of fish, depending on whether we know we're alone in the universe, or we know we're not alone in the universe, or whether we think we are alone. Yeah, I've often been more cautious than you when it comes to things like, it's going to happen this year, whenever it's going to happen. But to be honest, Steve, I really do believe that this could happen almost at any moment now. We've never been this close with disclosure.
Well, it's not at any moment. It's not the way it's supposed to happen, and the way I believe it will happen. It's not going to be you wake up one morning and there it is. Okay. Now, again, in terms of the United States, in terms of other heads of state, all right. Yes, you could wake up in the morning and the news comes on and you just learn that the president of this country or that country has gone in front of the press and announced that they have full confirmation of an extraterrestrial presence and then providing evidence. That could happen. But in terms of this country, that's not going to happen. And we don't want it to happen that way. What will happen is we're going to have a series of hearings, congressional hearings, in which some very, very impressive witnesses, almost all military or possibly agency like NASA or DOD people, but nevertheless, which I can kind of consider military, but basically national defense, national security type people are going to testify to their experiences, a lot of which we already know about and we've heard about. It's been written by the researchers, but ignored by the Congress and the DoD. But a lot of this testimony will not be new to you or me, but it will be new to the vast majority of the world's people. And these hearings will go on for several weeks. They will be watched by hundreds of millions of people. They'll be broadcast around the world. And it is after enough of that has taken place, the president will be in a position politically and historically and appropriately to be able to come before the American people and say, I am as convinced as you are that this confirms that we are not alone, and we have much more to tell you. And I'm going to be looking into our programs, our classified programs, and so forth to see what should be brought public on this. I'm not sure how I'll say it. It's going to be awkward, regardless. But nevertheless, it'll be much more well received, given what's happened these last couple of years. All right, these last 5 years. That is what is going to take place. So anything that advances getting these hearings done is good. Anything that slows it down is bad. So right now, I'm optimistic. Now, we just had a recent development, very positive development. Again, this suddenly turned up. Back in April, because of the work of A.J. Gavard, who is the leading researcher, one of the leading researchers in all of South America and certainly in Brazil, been out the field for 40 years, he sort of got kind of launched an initiative to persuade the Brazilian Senate or Brazilian Congress to hold a hearing on this. And it was announced in April that they would in the Brazilian Senate.
Oh,
well,
wow.
Just yesterday we just learned that the date for that has been set as June 24, that Robert Salles will be flying down there to testify before the Brazilian Senate about, guess what, nuclear weapons tampering, all right?
Yeah, that's his experience.
That Luis Elizondo will be speaking to the Senate via Zoom or via video, all right? So this is a very significant development. It should scare the hell out of the Department of Defense, the DoD, and the MOD. But as I put it in a email I just sent out to all of my colleagues, it's kind of what I would call what's the word I'm looking for? It's it's designed to provide information on immediately if something breaks, so that everybody in this group, this particular group that I have, I call the disclosure list, can think about it and react to it before things get better known. In other words, early warning kind of thing or whatever.
Yeah.
I sent out and I said basically this: for 25 years, a number of officers who served in the Air Force regarding our nuclear weapon sites, who had the power to launch nuclear weapons and so forth, came forward. A quarter century ago, started coming forward. Yeah, we were there with this testimony, and they have been ignored by the Department of Defense and the Air Force for 25 years. They have been dealt with marginally by the press, who've never really made a significant effort to really put their material out. They've written books, they've had documentaries, and so in all of that 25 years, not a single one of them has ever sat in front of Congress to testify to what is the most significant evidence regarding the extraterrestrial presence there is.
I know. I mean, they've appeared at private hearings, like Dr. Stephen Greer's press conference, and
that's not a hearing. That is not a hearing. Right. That is a press conference.
Okay, but also the citizen hearing.
That was a mock congressional hearing. I'm talking about an actual hearing in front of a legislative body, which is obviously where they should be testifying, has never happened. And so as it turns out, unless the United States government does something over the next 24 days, the first hearing, the first governmental body that will take testimony from a nuclear weapons tampering witness, probably the most famous, Robert Salles, will be Brazil. Well, now, if I'm a member of the DoD or the Congress, I should be grotesquely embarrassed by that. I should be ashamed by that. It's outrageous. It's disgusting. Okay, and not that Bob is testifying. Bob is. I love the fact that he's testifying, but it is a indictment of American government.
He has to go to another country. Yeah.
You know, it's 75-year absolute uber-all commitment to this lie. We will lie and lie and lie. We will ignore. We will do everything we can to not tell you the truth. So let Brazil do it. We don't give a damn. Well, let me tell you, there will be consequences.
Well, this is absolutely why you could appeal to sort of patriotic rivalry over this, because, as we've explained many times, the US has always been at the center of this whole truth embargo, and for another country to end it it'd be worse than Sputnik getting into space. Russians getting into space first. It would
Well,
be an
it's not.
absolute.
Brazil's not going to end it.
But to have
Well,
this
let me put it
hearing
this way.
would be a major step along the way, wouldn't it?
You know, we have an interesting situation in Brazil.
Especially when you have an American serviceman having to go to another country to have an official hearing of this very, very interesting experience he had. We won't go into details now, ladies and gentlemen, but just Google Robert Salas. Yeah.
Profound, not experience, a profound witness to an
Yes.
extraordinary occurrence. Okay, and he's not the only one. There are other of these witnesses that have come forward as well. Some are dying off because the government has managed to stretch the truth embargo out long enough that they can die off, which I'm sure every time one of them dies, somebody at the DOD has a party. Okay.
Sadly, we lost Jesse Marcel Jr. recently, and we've
that was years ago, but just a couple of years ago, we lost one of the key witnesses. But there are plenty of other nuclear weapons tampering witnesses out there who, in light of a formal hearing where we're actually going to do something, and they're able to appear with others, I think they will suddenly turn up and be vetted and be able to testify. But there is not much likelihood that this hearing in the Brazilian Senate will lead to action by the Brazilian president, because Brazil is also in the middle of extreme, substantial political turmoil. It has a president, and has had a president very much like the one we had recently, and this is not a person that I view as worthy of addressing this issue, frankly. And then they may be about to re-elect a president from a past time who has a lot more popular support, controversial. Almost everybody that runs for government in Brazil is controversial. So there's kind of a transition going on. So the idea that the Brazilian Senate, Brazilian legislature could somehow go from a hearing and then somehow get the president, the executive, to take action is unlikely, but not out of the question. Okay.
Well, surprises do come our way. I mean, what happened in 2017 was a complete surprise to most of us. I mean, I don't know anyone who predicted it. I was quite astonished. But so you never know what might happen, Steve.
No. But it's my job.
Something could come out of left field. You know?
Yeah, but it's my job to consider these possibilities, because when I do these shows and put them out, what I'm doing is I'm happy to inform you, Ben, and I'm happy to inform your audience. But when I speak on any of these things, as far as I'm concerned, I'm talking to the UK government, I'm talking to the United States government, I'm talking to the DOD, whether they're listening or not. That's what I'm doing, so that they have these perspectives. Or I'm just kind of reminding them of what's at stake. I've done it for 20 years, right? I'm constantly doing what I can. I wish I could do it on 60 Minutes, but I don't get a call. I'd like to do it more on CNN than I used to long ago. I don't get a call, but that's all right, because I think this is a message they're just too afraid of. If you're within certain boundaries, okay, come on, talk about it. But no, you're going to go here. They can't have you. But it's a simple message. One nation is going to go first here. There are some advantages to the world if it's the United States, but ultimately history won't give a damn which nation ends this truth embargo and begins the post-disclosure era. Ultimately, history will not give a damn. But in the short term, there may be some some reasons why it's desirable for the U.S. to get this done and to lead here. But I assure you, if another nation goes first, I'm not going to cry crocodile tears.
On the subject of the US and the progress it's made, the hearing on the 17th. I mean, it's one of the most popular videos on the particular channel. It came out on the Intelligence Committee channel. Mm-hmm. It's by far the most popular video. I watched it actually on my phone on a coach to London. It's only an hour and a half. The public hearing was only an hour and a half long. Mm-hmm. There were a few gems, I thought. Congressman Gallagher asked some good questions, and I was quite surprised that Mr. Moultrie and Mr. Bray had not. I get the feeling they were probably being a bit dishonest. Like, for example, they reckon they never heard of the Maelstrom incident. This is Captain Salas's, as you said, the witness to this nuclear tampering. Mm-hmm. How likely is that? I mean, how honest do you think they were being, Steve?
It's possible. This hearing was exactly what I expected, and it was perfectly fine. not too many people have the knowledge I have about the history of this phenomena or the perspective on it that I have, which is political. Right? It's not science, it's not evidentiary. So it's exactly what I expected and quite appropriate. It was an initial opening move. It was the first hearing in 54 years since the 68 hearing that was part of the close down of the issue for the government that they actually got away with from 68 to 78. They got about a 10-year hiatus. In that period, MUFON got going. It was launched in '69, but MUFON was never what NICAP was. And I don't think even today it's what NICAP was, though MUFON is finally getting it together. I mean, they're actually lobbying in Washington. They're actually having meetings in Washington. So MUFON has finally made the decision to get political. I've been telling them to do that since 1999, and they weren't listening, but apparently they've decided to do that. But as far as this hearing, this is the first one in 54 years. It was going to be perfunctory. It was going to be going through the motions. It was going to serve as an opening move, an hors d'oeuvre, an appetizer to the main meal. And the two men that came forward were not longtime researchers of the subject. They were two high-level officials that were assigned the job of working with the soon-to-be announced executive director of the project to go through and doing the things that were being asked of it, the DoD by the legislation of 2020 and 2021 that was championed by Gillibrand and by Marco Rubio, our senator, as well as Representative Ruben Gallego. And they had asked for certain things, reports set up, and the DoD is complying. All right. In fact, they're trying to comply so much that in terms of the setup that Gillibrand requested in the 2021 Senate Appropriations Bill, or the ultimate appropriations bill that was signed, they had to June to quote comply with that legislation. They ended up launching the program, or announcing the project before the bill was even passed in November of last year. So that's a sign that we're not even going to wait. We're going to get going now. People, a lot of people are going to watch that hearing. It's being copied and viewed all over the world. And I'll tell you what I've told quite a few hosts, and I'll continue to say this. You will not understand what happened there. You will not get what happened there. You will be frustrated at what happened there, confused at what happened in this hearing, unless you firmly understand, get, accept these things. A couple of things. One, okay, despite of whatever you have been hearing of late, going all the way back to the New York Times articles, and anything that's happened since, and any statement from any politician or national security person or former director of the CIA or former person working for the MOD or a former politician in the UK, regardless of what you hear, the United Kingdom and the United States has known about the extraterrestrial presence since no later than 1947. The United Kingdom knows that the United States got a crash vehicle. It knows that it got bodies. It knows that it got a living extraterrestrial that survived for a while. The United Kingdom is fully aware of any number of other events that the United States is aware of and has taken, how would you say, into its possession, crash vehicles, whatever else. The United Kingdom is relatively briefed at the appropriate level about what we know. Yeah. All right?
We've got a few ourselves as well. They've crashed here in
So again, let me repeat what I'm saying. I mean, let me get really clear. I hope people really need to think about this. The United Kingdom, United States, Soviet Union, and Russia, and probably a number of other major countries, though some much later than others, okay, are aware and know there is an extraterrestrial presence. And there are a number of vehicles and a number of probably efforts to re-engineer this technology here and there, mostly the United States, okay? So, again, you have to know that. You have to get that, all right? And the other thing is that the United States and its allies, with the, I guess you'd say implicit, not implicit, but with the separate not cooperation, except the additional policies of the Soviet Union, Russia, and China, not in cooperation with us, but on their own, have embargoed this simple truth for 75 years. All right?
Yeah.
Simple truth. ETs are here. Not what they wear, what they dream about, or what planet they're from, but they're here. That has been embargoed from the world's people. That truth, that information has been embargoed. Once you get that, and then you look at what's happening now, you can put it in perspective. If in fact the Department of Defense is aware of an extraterrestrial presence, and they're going through this process leading up to ultimately confirming it to us, but the president will do that. You see the dilemma they have. You see the problem they have. They need to advance the progress. They need to take questions. They need to do stuff. But they need to do it in such a way that gives the impression to the world that they just found out about it.
That's going to be tricky. They're going to need some kind of major spin doctor to dig them out of that. And as we've discussed before, this is one of the things holding them back, is they're going to have to admit that they did this truth embargo, and for what reason? How are they going to justify it?
Well, you say hold them back. It's the reason that the truth embargo became in and of itself a justification for continuing the truth embargo. This is not unusual. There are people, I don't know if it's happened to you, but certainly it happens in people's lives, that they lie about something, or they do something so bad, so potentially destructive to their life or the lives of others, that the lie itself simply makes it impossible to tell the truth.
Yeah, I've known many situations like that. In personal relationships, but I mean, in terms of politics, it happens quite. If the politician wants to do something unpopular, or they've done something unpopular, and it could be some kind of scandal. We've seen that now with our Prime Minister over here, Boris Johnson. He has been caught doing an act of gross misconduct during the lockdown, and he's trying now to find a way, because he's been exposed, to continue without making himself look bad. And they go to enormous efforts using very complicated language and all kinds of excuses and all kinds of pseudo justifications to try and move away from whatever the scandal is, including distraction to make people forget, hoping people forget. Yeah. And we're going to see that on speed when disclosure happens.
The point I'm trying to make is that Boris Johnson's party behavior during the pandemic, which he's had to lie about, okay, this is a tiny little lie, okay,
I know.
Which because of that reason, the entire British government was not going to line up behind him and say, my God, this is so bad, this is so awful, that the British people must never know about it. No, not at all, not at all. So he's going to have to deal with it, and it is what it is. And his fate, again, is a tiny thing in history. I'm talking about a lie in terms of government or in terms of a person's private life. So bad that to have it made truth would be so destructive to that person's life that it must never see the light of day. These are big lies. This is not, this is going to be pretty significant. Whatever it is, in any case, it's going to be very significant. And there are many people that go through their entire life with such a lie. Now, a classic example of it, a standard example of it you hear, which in my view does not measure up to it, but it's something that turns up in fiction and what have you, is a man and woman have a loving relationship. They have a fine marriage, and it's wonderful. But one of them, usually the man, in a weak moment has an affair, maybe with a stranger, maybe with his wife's sister, whatever. He has an affair, and in the course of the script, it comes up by somebody, right, that, who does know. Okay, but again, it's not generally known. So it advises this person, look, never tell her. Never tell her. Nothing good will come of that. It will ruin the relationship. You have a wonderful thing. You made a mistake. Simply don't say anything. And this is a lie. This is a circumstance where it's a little bit unclear what's the best course of action. And there was a time when the best course of action was definitely don't tell her. And we're getting to a time when maybe that's not necessarily the best course of action, and people are starting to learn that, look, you need to be more understanding of others. You need not to be so judgmental and so rigid, and that knowing the truth and it can make a relationship even closer. But that is a kind of a standard example that turns up. But I'm talking about lies bigger than that.
However, the metaphor is correct though, Steve, because I mean I've been in a situation like this, not me personally, but within my family this has happened. And if you don't tell her, I mean, it wasn't to her in this case, it was a him, but if you don't tell him, then okay, it's they don't know, but then it ruins that. You know, you can't lie to yourself if you have done something bad, and it will come out in some way. It'll poison you internally to the point
Perfect.
where But so if you come clean, you see, and you admit it, she might be angry, and she says, "I'm really sorry," you know, and there might be, you might split up for a while, but if you can forgive each other, it's so much better, Steve. It's so much better.
It's not always. Not always. There's a situation where the man finally confesses it and she files for divorce the next day. The point is, okay, you hit on
a risk. Yeah, it's a risk.
You can't pray. Again, what I was saying is there can be a lie so bad, situation so bad, where the situation itself, the lie itself, the thing behind the lie is so bad that it is an enormous counter pressure to not tell the truth. It is in of itself something that makes it extremely difficult to end that lie. Okay, now, however, as you point out, one spouse decides, hey, I'm just never going to say anything and it'll all be fine. But that lie is in that person's head. That is there, and it tends to change and warp and affect the relationship, and ultimately does a lot of damage, whether or not it leads to the truth or not, which is exactly what has happened with the extraterrestrial phenomena truth embargo. The government made the decision that it's imperative that this truth be embargoed from the people. No matter what they think or suspect or what research they've done, how many books they've written, whatever the hell, how many witnesses come, it will be embargoed. Okay. And it has, and because it's so big, so huge, that they fear that it would be destructive or whatever. But guess what? There are people that know. There are people that know that lie has been in place. People inside government. There are people inside government for decades that have had to cover for that lie. They've had to lie about other things. In other words, this big lie has generated plenty of other lies. All right. In order to protect the big lie, you got to make a lot of small lies, and so it's affected their sense of involvement in the nation, their patriotism, how they feel about themselves as employees of the government or members of the armed services. But then as people start to figure out that maybe this is the truth, it's starting to undermine their credibility. So while the big lie remains, the damage grows over time. So my view is that ultimately, and this is a tough one, that the truth is always the superior path. It doesn't mean that the outcome will be wonderful. It doesn't mean there won't be pain. It doesn't mean your worst nightmare won't occur. But in general, right, the truth is the superior path, which means that in 1,000 cases like this, the truth will end up being the best outcome in 990, but 10 of them will be awful. Well, that's life. That is life. You can't lie to your entire country simply because there's a chance that telling the truth would be maybe not work out so well. Like you can predict the future, like you can see into the future. See, all of the people behind this lie, going all the way back to 47, have all pretended to be soothsayers, to be Nostradamus. In other words, we're going to do this because we can see the future. We know what's going to happen. We know everything's going to happen, and therefore this lie is the superior way. History will view it this way. Historians, if there are any historians in the not too distant future left to write about it, will ultimately come to the conclusion this was a colossal mistake, a massive mistake of historical proportions. Nothing, probably no mistake the human race has ever made, and it's made some buttes. Yeah. I think historically will measure up to the mistake that we made in 1947 when we committed at that point. We will not tell the truth about this event and any other events like it, either prior or thereafter. I think it's the biggest mistake in human history.
Yeah. Well, there's potentially a far worse mistake that they could make, and that is to let it continue. I do think that the truth is not just in 99% of the time. I think it's always the best policy. And yet there are consequences. There'll be a massive fallout from coming clean. The truth, the horrible reality, which has been kept from people. Yet,
well, it's not necessarily horrible now, Ben. Not the ET.
I don't think so. No, but
horrible. But the truth embargo is certainly uncomfortable and not pleasant. Now, there may be some very nasty truths embedded in the fundamental ET reality that we'll learn about.
Yeah.
But the horrible is not quite the word. The truth embargo ultimately will be seen as a mistake, though it'll never be 100% clear. But I think there'll be a consensus. This was a mistake. We should have announced it early on, if not in July of 1947. And that's based on significant empirical evidence. And what do I mean by that? Because history will have a very good record of everything that happened between 1947 and 2022. In other words, that's a long time. That's 75 years. A lot happened in those 75 years. And I don't need to tell you that a lot of it was pretty goddamn awful.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Okay?
Yeah,
awful,
definitely.
awful, awful. And so they're going to say, what would have those 75 years been like if we just told the truth in 47? Let the world know the truth about the world that they live in, and how would it have affected all actions of all people and nations going forward. We'll never know, but historians are going to guess at it, and I think their conclusion is, man, we'd have been better off if we'd have known that.
Well, not just historians, but authors as well. I'm not making a shameless plug, but that's the whole point of my Roswell trilogy fictional project, was to answer that question that you just asked. What would
wait a minute. Are you saying that you are writing a trilogy of books?
I've written a trilogy of books. Yes.
Okay, you've written a trilogy of books about what the world would have been like if Roswell, if we had learned the truth in 1947.
Yes, we discussed it before.
How do I not know this?
Don't you? I showed you.
You're not promoting enough.
Oh, I think you've seen that before. That's the first one.
No,
yeah.
no.
Don't you? Oh, right, yeah.
When did you have you published all three, or is that the first of three?
They're all published now. The last one, this one was 2016, and then the last one was 2018. But it was you who gave me the idea. Don't you remember?
Well, no, I have mentioned it several times.
Right.
I mentioned it. I mentioned it to a number of people. I've talked to, I've mentioned it to Bryce Zabel and Richard Dolan.
Oh, Bryce.
I
is
didn't
doing
know that
something
somebody had done
similar,
it.
Yeah, Bryce is doing something similar. I know. Yeah, I mean, you did an interview like years ago, and you just said, you know what? I wrote to you actually. And I said, well, I'm a fictional writer. That's a great idea, and you were very encouraging. Okay. So I went and I wrote three books. So £10, all good bookshops now.
Okay, Ben, you don't strike me as a voracious self-promoter. I'm pretty sure you're not. You're kind of a modest man. All right, look.
Most of the time, yeah.
Look, send me the links to this book, these books. Yes. Okay, send me the information, whatever the hell, and I'm going to get into them, and I'm going to promote the hell out of them. I didn't know. Okay, this is fantastic. Wonderful.
I'll send you the details. Thanks, Steve. That's really great. I'll send you the details of them, and it's I've had a lot of fun writing them, and I've had some very good reviews, and so
are they on Amazon? I hope to God.
Yes, they're everywhere.
Again, the fact that I don't know tells me that you have underpromoted rather profoundly here. But that said, I think we could agree that the timing for the world to find out about your books is quite good at this particular time. I do not agree.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying this actually to Dave Altman and David Mason. I interviewed them about the Tear in the Sky film. I said, when you started planning this film, you didn't know when you were going to strike this iron how hot it would be. But as it happens, you struck it, and it's been very hot.
Timing's good.
Yeah, so it's serendipitous on both our parts, because I actually started writing this before the 2017 December 2017 announcement, but which is not. It has contributed actually. It has. I'm sure it has contributed a lot to the success of the book.
All right, look, I'm going to read it. I'm sure I'll like it. It's your take. There's obviously an almost infinite number of ways one could reinterpret history from 47 to the present time.
You may not agree with every position I take, but
of course not. But still, I'll look forward to it. Wow, this is amazing. Again, the point is, what? Now, I would make the case. I would agree with you. That given the circumstances of the 75 years, with the lie still going, all right, not ending it now very soon would be the second biggest mistake in human history. Okay. Now, why do I say that? 75 years after Roswell, the population of the world has gone from, let's see, hang on, around 3 billion to 8 billion. In other words, it was at 1.5 billion roughly at the turn of the century prior to World War I, 1900, doubled in 50 years. It doubled again in 25 years, and it's about to triple, right? It's at 7.9 billion, or it's closing in and tripling. The pressure that this population is now putting on the planet is immeasurable. It's just off the charts, and it's putting in every conceivable way: food, housing, clothing, shelter, politics, war, terrorism, the planet itself, the biosphere, the pressure on everything. And every one of these areas that is under pressure is fraying. It's coming undone. All right. And worst of all of this pressure on every facet of human existence, because one planet, not 8 billion people, it ain't getting larger. All right, has increased the risk of nuclear war to the greatest it has been in the 75 years. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists has stated this is the most risky time ever. We're 100 seconds from midnight. They may very well make it closer to midnight, right? Which is nuclear war.
The doomsday clock thing, yeah.
And you have people talking about nuclear war everywhere, on television, in the halls of Congress, commentators, historians. It's now so clearly a risk that people have just dropped their reticence to speak of it at all, because you don't want to scare people, right? Well, they're scaring the hell out of us because it's true. Yeah. And that's just one thing. The list of things that the human race, not to mention preparedness for a pandemic, I'll add that one for sure. The list of things the human race is simply not prepared to deal with now, that doesn't have the resources, or is too politically divided, or stupid, or afraid to deal with, and so forth, is so long that we're just facing chaos and possibly a massive decline in human civilization in one way or another. So that and anyone that looks at this, I think rationally, their conclusion should be, there's no way out of this. Okay, we're not going to get through this. I mean, we want to be optimistic. We want to, I'm sure there'll be people, right, when they see a friggin' ICBM, far off in the distance over the horizon, heading right for them, will continue to be optimistic right up until the point that it hits. Meaning, I think I may survive this. Depends, maybe it'll hit over there, over here. That's the nature of humans, right? The fact is that we can't overcome everything. If there was a meteor coming at us 15 miles wide, bigger than the one that hit the Yucatan and destroyed the biosphere for a good while, all the optimism in the friggin' world isn't going to change it. That's going to be it. That will be the end of civilization, end of most life on Earth. It'll all start over again. Might take 2 million years to come back. So this idea that we can overcome everything is an illusion. And the things we're facing now as a species, as a civilization, even as a member of the biosphere, are so overwhelming that the idea that, we're going to work it all out, no. Not
we don't know for certain. We don't know for certain if we can work it all out. I mean, it's true. I mean, we live in a universe which is naturally hazardous in terms of natural disasters like meteors. We also have there's aggressive tendencies in civilization. We have nuclear armed superpowers, and we have NATO and the Russian Federation. There's also dozens of other countries that have nuclear weapons now.
I know. Yeah, and we have a massive drought coming. We have a massive famine coming. We still have hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people out there that are desperately poor, right? That have very little. We still have people suffering enormous diseases, deaths from diseases. We just push off to the side because it's not us, it's somebody else, and they'll just die quietly and leave us alone. They're not going to leave us alone. They're going to come for the wealthy and the rich nations. They're just simply not going to go away and die by the hundreds of millions because, well, there's nothing we can do about you. So sorry. No. So you talk about terrorism. We haven't even seen terrorism yet. The potential for terrorism in this world is 1,000 times worse than it is now. It could get so bad you can't even get on an airliner. The point is that we have reached a point where we either take dramatic action or we are probably going to see the last days that we even would consider civilization. And what dramatic action do we have available to us? Right? Oh, a summit meeting. We'll have the major nations, we'll have the group of 12, the group of 20 will get together to come up with some policies that, if enacted, will start to quickly correct things. No. All right? We have these all the time. They're utterly worthless. Some messiah will turn up, some massive leader. Oh, we keep having that, don't we? Who's so enigmatic and so charismatic that they're able to lead the world out of this mess and into a promised land. That's an illusion that has been going on through the human history for a long time. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, they usually lead you to worse places, those kinds of characters.
What if we have one thing and one thing only? Without getting into ancient history, without talking about what happened 3,000, 5,000, 6,000 years ago, right, which I happen to think was quite interesting, but not relevant to our situation now, we have one thing, and that is this 7.9 billion people, overcrowded planet with an absolute massive laundry list of problems, serious problems, existential problems, can be told in a day that this is not the only civilized planet in this galaxy, that there are others, maybe uncounted numbers, that we're being engaged by other civilizations that have survived and are interstellar, and they're interested in us. They've been engaging us for some time. There's all kinds of things we can learn. There's things that might come from this that could be very helpful to the problems that we face. That is the one thing we have. We have nothing else. Nothing else. Any esteemed Harvard scientist or scholar wants to get up on a stage and explain to me all the other things we have at our disposal that will get us out of this mess. I'm dying to hear it. I don't care how many degrees they have. I don't care what their IQ is. I'm dying to see what they come up with is how we get out of this escape room. Right? Oh, I'm so clever. I can see that, this, and that, and here's how we get out of the room, and we'll all go have a party afterwards. No. I'd love to see it happen. It's not going to happen. They're not even going to try. Right? We have one way out of this, and it may not be enough. Disclosure may not be enough, but it's the best shot we have. And every day that we put off disclosure, we are rolling the dice and saying, well, we have some more time. We have some more time. We have some more time. And maybe we don't have more than a week.
If there's going to be a future for this planet and humans, it has to be a post-disclosure future. I agree. And you mentioned that the knowledge that we're not alone in the universe would help, and indeed, it's simply that awareness would be a massive boost to global morale. Yet it goes much deeper than that. For example, we were talking about the energy systems that may have been back engineered and things like that. If those were declassified, it would actually help enormously with many of the social, environmental, and economic problems you mentioned.
If they exist, and if we could develop them, the fact that we don't know. I mean, if the government announced the extraterrestrial presence, it would also be in a position to say, look, we've told you about that. We have studied their craft. We have studied this technology for years. We haven't been able to make it useful. We haven't been able to re-engineer it. Okay. Now, why is that important? Assuming they're not lying, and I'm assuming they're telling the truth at this point, because what's the hell's the point not to tell the truth? You've just announced the ET presence is here. You've just confirmed you've been lying for 70 years. So tell the truth. Why is it? Because the world would know, okay, we don't, well, there's two things that come from that. One, the world will learn in that moment that we haven't reverse engineered that tech. It isn't available yet. And so we're going to have to, we can't rely on that. We need to get on, we need to keep pedaling our bicycle. Okay, but there's and that may spur more aggressive attempts to work with our own science and engineering to come up with more solutions. However, there's another aspect. Look, the world will learn that there's probably several independently evolved sentient beings from probably almost certainly different planets, okay, that is actually here. They're engaging us. They have interstellar travel. They can fly between stars. They've got some pretty good science and engineering. Certainly, there is the potential possibility that these advanced entities might provide us, not force us to somehow spend another 100, 200, 300 years to get to this technology, which we won't survive. They may be willing to provide us access or assistance with those technologies. That is a real possibility. Doesn't mean that they will. It just means it's a very legitimate possibility. And I should obviously point out that there are countless examples of that in the terrestrial human world, where a nation with more advanced technology than another nation that is in dire straits has provided that technology to that nation to help it get out of its dire straits. I mean, there are other instances where we just invade them and take them over, bomb them. But I mean, there are plenty of instances where we've actually helped them. In other words, nations with more tech help nations with less tech to try to solve their problem. This happens all the time. It's happened for years.
Well, if they made that offer, yeah.
Yeah,
if they made that offer,
that extraterrestrials would not conduct themselves in a similar way is ridiculous. It is quite possible. Now, the ETs can do this anytime they want. All right. At any time, they could announce themselves and say, "Look, we need to help you. You guys are a mess. I mean, you really screwed everything up. And here we are. Now we're going to help you." They could do that. They've chosen not to. All right. I have suggested countless times on interviews like this that there is a process underway leading to that, and that process involves a long period of engagement, a period of awareness leading to formal confirmation, acknowledgement, where we acknowledge to ourselves that they are here, not being forced to accept it because they do some massive display, but rather we acknowledge it based upon a certain learning curve, an awareness curve. And then once we acknowledge it, that learning curve is going to really start heading straight up, so that the world will start learning an enormous amount about this ET presence in the year to follow. And that learning curve then makes it comfortable and appropriate and more perhaps productive for then the ETs to confirm their presence. In other words, we confirm their presence to us, they then confirm it to us. Once they are in open contact with us, the possibility of this technology share becomes very real. And so I could make the case that every day the truth embargo continues, the day the day in which the ETs might be able to openly confirm themselves to us continues, and we continue in the state that we're in. Now, again, we need help right now, but we still have a certain amount of time to play with. And so if disclosure happens this year or a couple of years from now, or if it happened years, it's not that much difference, I think, in the ultimate outcome. But at some point, it becomes a very existential equation, meaning that if we delay any longer. Now, let's be clear. If a nuclear war happens because of Ukraine, then I think it will be safe to say we delayed too long. Okay? In other words, the ship has sailed. It's too long. That's too long.
That won't happen. Hopefully that.
Okay, so that's an example. But there's other things that could happen that could be delayed too long. We could have a virus emerge on this planet 100 times, 1,000 times more many times, hundreds, maybe 100 times more deadly than corona, every bit or even more infectious than corona, and resistant to vaccines. They could kill 6 billion people if it wants to. Nature is that powerful. If that happens, then we have delayed too long, okay? So the question is, let's stop rolling the dice here. Let's just get it done. If we get it done now, then at least we can say, we did that. And if things don't work out well, we can say, look, we did the best we could. We've confirmed the ET presence. The ETs did not respond. They left. They went away. We then destroyed the planet, whatever. But at least we can say that. But if they have a nuclear war start later this year, and still the presence of the extraterrestrials had not been confirmed to this world, is so outrageously egregious, so awful that I hate to even think about it. I mean, it's just
same here. I mean,
it's an embarrassment. It's disgusting. It's irrational. It's pathetic. It's demeaning of our species, and of course it's a catastrophe. It's an awful thing. So it's hard to contemplate. It's just really
Yeah,
hard
well,
to
I don't
contemplate.
like to contemplate. So basically, if the ETs made that sort of offer, I would, I'd swallow my pride and accept. And
Why would you have to swallow your
and
pride?
also, well, because it's this thing about us sorting our own problems out. It's the prime directive from Star Trek. I mean, Star Trek is a wonderful series because Star Trek puts humanity, I mean, indeed, also Vulcans and things like that, into the position of the aliens and what it's like to be an extraterrestrial landing on Earth because they visit alien planets. So I mean, but a lot of the storyline in Star Trek comes from this desire that some of the characters have to intervene in contrary to the prime directive. And
they almost always do.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of storyline comes from that.
Name me. You have to look very hard through all of the episodes of Star Trek to find the one or two where they actually honored the prime directive.
Yeah, that's what's so great about that series. That's why it's such a good series. Yeah. I mean, but as far as the idea is, well, maybe we don't have the free energy and anti-gravity and things like that. Well, I would dispute that simply because it's not just aliens that invented it. Humans have invented it. People like Nikola Tesla, George Pigott, Thomas Townsend Brown. I mean, the list goes on. I interviewed Andrew Johnson. He's an expert in this sort of thing. So, and if you just imagine that we have access to that technology. You mentioned earlier about people, famine and things like this. Well, if you have a means of desalinating seawater without using fuel you have to pay for, you can irrigate deserts.
You got that from me, didn't you? You got that. I've been saying that for 20 years. I've been giving presentations on that for. You must have gotten that from me. Yeah. Well, desalinization. Why don't we have some desalination?
Not just you, Steve.
But I mean, reason, right?
Yeah. Yes. You have mentioned that, and of course you can desalinate seawater. They do it in the United Arab Emirates, for example, but it costs money. But
it costs a lot of money.
Yeah, if you do it without money,
too much money.
Yeah,
energy costs too much, and energy keeps going up.
Well, that's because we're using coal and oil and gas, and we're using things we have to pay for.
I mean, this is the key point that I'm trying to get across to your audience. The reason that we cannot solve the water problem, freshwater problem, is that we don't have the convert seawater to fresh water.
Yeah, we have to use the existing fresh water. We have to use existing fresh water.
But the amount that the need that we have for seawater, for fresh water, is such that the cost of actually solving that problem through desalination of seawater, right, through steam distillation, which is the absolute the fastest, most effective way, is beyond our economy. We don't have it.
Yeah,
right? It would cost quadrillions of dollars because energy costs so much. Now, if the world would all agree that it would provide whatever energy source is used, coal, oil, gas, whatever the hell, for free, meaning any of these plants are set up, we will simply provide it for free, then again, the cost of it would go down and we could start generating it. Except that the amount that's needed would so drain the resources for other uses that I think it wouldn't work. It's just not functional. We need a technological breakthrough. But that is why we don't have that steam distillation. They built a reverse osmosis plant in San Diego. I don't know how many billions of dollars it costs, and it generates an amount of water, but it's a tiny fraction.
Well,
you know that Lake Mead, have you seen how low Lake Mead is in Colorado?
It's exactly like the Dead Sea. It's dropping.
It's becoming the Dead Sea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's dropping and dropping, and that's because the rivers, because of cities like Las Vegas and Phoenix, and also in the Middle East, you got Israel and Jordan and the cities that are growing there. It's taking the water out of these rivers.
Yeah, but also we're having less water. Okay.
Yeah, less
rain. We're having droughts.
Yes.
Okay, why? Because we have a warming trend going on. There is a global warming trend, right? And there is a virus that's killing people. And those that have been politically convinced that there is no warming trend and there is no virus are the lawful prey of stupidity.
So
in other words, they're basically telling the world, come kill me because I have a certain strong affiliation to a particular political leader and I'm willing to die for this person. They're literally saying, come kill me. Okay, the nature and the world does not care about our religion or our political affiliations. It will kill us just like that if the circumstances prevail. If there's going to be a drought, there will be a drought. It's going to be a warming trend, there'll be a warming trend. It's going to be a virus so lethal that people flee into caves. It will be. Nature does not care about that. We are destroying ourselves. with our politics, in some cases our religions, our just connection and rampant stupidity, and no one cares. The universe doesn't care. But the ETs, they have been there and done this. They've been through these kinds of things. They didn't evolve straight out of the ether as full-blown technological civilizations. At one time, they were the equivalent of our monkeys or our ancient ancestors, okay, our Cro-Magnon, our Denisovans. They had to evolve just like we did. They have been through this already. And then the question is, they know exactly what our fate could be. Question is, what
Carl
is
Sagan. Carl Sagan, I mean, I know we got problems with him, but he did ask, he did say, if you could ask these ETs one question, what would it be? And he said, I'd ask, how did you do that? How did you actually achieve that to reach the level you are now, without having this technology to destroy yourselves or ruin the environment? Now, you mentioned this showpiece. It is just a showpiece in San Diego. Now, it costs money to run it because you have to use conventional fuels, gas, oil, nuclear fission.
It's a reverse osmosis plant. It's not steam distillation. Reverse osmosis is not as fast as steam distillation. It's good, but again, that's what they chose to do because I think the energy cost of running it is less. However, the amount of water you can generate is also less, and so it's not a solution.
Yeah. With this technological breakthrough, you could have those kinds of plants all up and down the coast. I mean, I describe it in my book, actually, the scenario exactly like this in my book. In my 3 books, you could have that water. You could take it to wherever it needs within the continental North America, and those rivers could essentially return to nature. And the fresh water that nature provides could then be used to provide.
Again, you can park them where they're needed. Okay,
yeah.
You see,
your pipelines. Like, you could have pipelines that you could using Schauberger coils. The water could be transferred. It would essentially flow itself uphill, and even if you needed to.
So if Somalia needs water, you park them off the coast of Somalia. If Central America needs water, you park them off the coast of Central America, as opposed to going, well, it's so unfortunate that you live in Central America. There's just no water nearby. So, and let me give you another example. Look, technically we could do this today. You could build a desalination plant capable of generating mass quantities of water, the kind of water that's necessary, and you could power it with solar. Okay? Here's the problem. Based upon the energy needs of such a plant to do what it has to do, you'd park it off the coast. And then on the coast, you would have to start putting up arrays of solar panels. Okay?
Solar
But guess what?
The sun doesn't always shine.
The amount of solar panels that you would have to create would stretch on for miles.
And they break down. They break. And they break very easily.
A massive amount of money, though it's a one-time cost plus maintenance. But let's just say, and you'd have to do that for every single one of these steam distillation plants. So
the maintenance
doesn't work.
Yeah, the maintenance cost for solar panels. The same with wind turbines. The actual economic problems. I mean, the maintenance costs are huge. These have a lot of moving parts. They break very easily.
Sure.
And of course, the wind doesn't always blow. The sun doesn't always shine. You have this throughput problem with energy generation. So yeah, exactly. That's the problem. That's why these renewables that we're allowed to use could never replace the fossil fuels, which is why the oil companies breathe a sigh of relief that we're allowed to use wind turbines and things.
Let's put it this way: they will not be able to replace the fossil fuel mode in time. Given enough time, yes, we could perfect solar and other alternative energies to the point where they could do it, but that might take 100 years. It might take 150 years. We don't have the time anymore. We waited too long, right? And we don't have the tech. Our solar tech is getting better all the time, but still, there's 8 billion people. Remember the 8 billion people? Okay, and they all want electricity, and they all want flush toilets, and they all want cars. They all want all of these things. And so as the population continues to expand, the demand continues to grow and outstretches everything. There's another example of this, the madness of this all. The garbage situation in the world is beyond comprehension. We generate garbage. It's just hard to envision. It's hard to measure it. It is massive. But, rather than really try to find the tech that would solve the problem, which we don't really have now, but but with a breakthrough in technology could provide us, we came up with recycling. In other words, if you recycle, we can help solve the garbage problem. And so people go to enormous efforts to recycle their bottles and cans and so forth, and they feel better about it. Does it make a difference? No, it does not. Recycling can't even begin to address the massive amount of garbage that we're generating. It is just a sop. It's just a little thing to make you feel comfortable. It's like giving a dying person morphine. Okay? It's not going to save you, but you're going to feel more comfortable while you're dying. These kinds of illusions continue to exist because we will not address the truth of this world. And one of the truths of this world is the extraterrestrial presence. And behind that truth may be the answers to these other dilemmas, which we also can address. It is a cascade of rapid evolution of solutions, all of which is being denied because the DOD is uncomfortable. Well, no, it's not just DOD. No president of the United States has been willing to put their political capital behind an absolute process leading to disclosure. They have all put their personal and political fortunes ahead of this truth. One way or another, every single president since 47 has chosen to do that, without exception, I assure you, one way or the other. And of course, their family and their historical legacy will have to answer for that.
Yeah. That brings us back to the lie, supporting the lie and things like that, and the necessity of the lie for its own sake. But it can't go on forever. I found that you use the metaphor of lies within families and within couples and things like that. I found that just don't tell her doesn't work in the long run, and it's almost like the truth has a power of its own. It's almost like a force of nature, Steve. I found.
Sure.
And,
absolutely. Good analogy. I like that.
It's something that can't be stopped in the long run. The longer you try to hold it back, the worse the side effects of holding it back get. And so at some point, somebody somewhere is going to make that decision, is going to say, I mean, if I was a politician, that's what I would do, which is probably why I've never been selected for high office, but that's what I would do.
Post-disclosure, things are possible, Ben.
I'll stand in an election then, yeah.
Sure.
Vote Ben.
Let me give you another analogy I think is useful. Here's another way to look at truth. Essentially, the simplest way to define truth, and boy, there are some really complex ways to define truth. The philosophers really enjoy doing that, and they bore me to death with it, frankly. Truth is simply what is. It's what is. Okay? Now, under the heading of what is a lot of things. Okay? From the absolute most trivial to the most profound. And a major subset of what is, which is truth, is the entire domain of the physics of the universe. Right? The entire domain of that. Every single law and every single effect that emerges from those laws is what is. It is truth. Okay? Some people like to think of scientific truth as hard truth. Now, of course, science and what we know is the what is that is science is the what is that we know about. If it wasn't for us, no one would know, and it would be irrelevant. Okay, the laws of the universe would be simply what they are, not even something to question. But sentient beings evolve that are trying to figure it out. And since we are limited and we are not all powerful, we are learning the truth about the universe, but in a slow way. An evolving way. We've developed processes to try to maximize the quality of our knowledge, the certainty of our knowledge, so that we come up with laws, for instance, that seem to hold true wherever, and so we have high confidence in them. But the actual what is beyond what we know, obviously. But we know that there is a what is. Hang on. What we have known is this. The universe it has laws, it functions under those laws, and while we don't know all of them and we don't know how they all work, they are there. Okay, and they're incredibly powerful. Okay, so when it comes to Hang on.
You okay, mate?
Take a pause.
Yeah, sure.
I gotta get some liquid.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Well, it's I hope Steve's all right there. In the meantime, though, I would like to say that that we're kind of in a situation where he's coming back now. Yeah. I was just telling the viewers. I don't know if you probably do watch things such as the Need to Know with Bryce Zabel and Ross Coulthard.
I try to watch a few things. There's only how many 3,000 podcasts now?
I know there's not enough hours in the day, but they said something very interesting. I think it was Bryce actually who said this, that there's certain things that are the physical laws of the universe, the actual reality of the universe that is there, and our discovery of it. And sometimes when we make these discoveries, it's uncomfortable. And there's been revolutions in our knowledge, such as Copernicus saying, well, the sun, and Galileo and other people who said the sun is actually the center of the solar system, not the Earth, and the Earth, the sun is just another star, And then there was Charles Darwin saying, humans are, we evolve. And humans evolve from apes and things like that. And then there was Sigmund Freud, who came up with, he started his insights into human psychology and things like that. And Zabel then went on to say, well, the ET, the actual acceptance of the ET presence is simply another of these revolutions. We find out we're not a tiny little oasis of life in an infinite cosmic desert, and we actually live in a living universe. We're part of a living universe.
Sure. It is a paradigm. I call it. There's a reason I call it my organization, Paradigm Research Group. It's the biggest paradigm shift in history. It covers so many areas. It's so broad, it's so profound, and so rapid. No paradigm shift is comparable.
And we survived the others, Steve. We survived the other revolutions. For example, people predicted when Origin of Species was published that people would, Christianity and Islam and Judaism would collapse and no one would go to church anymore. But those religions still exist. They've adapted. Most people who go to church don't believe in Adam and Eve literally anymore. And they accept what Charles Darwin said.
But
and this will be the same, I think.
Well, another paradigm shift that took place was the cracking open of the atom. Atomic physics was a paradigm shift, and we have not survived that one. We have not yet survived that paradigm.
Yes, we don't know yet.
This idea that we will always survive every paradigm shift. No, that's not a guarantee. But let me make another point.
Not guarantee, no.
Before there were
It can happen. It can happen. That's my point.
Before there were humans, Homo sapiens, before there were the ancestors to humans, before there was any life on this planet at all, there was a universe with the laws that we are slowly learning. It all predates us.
Yeah.
We came later. So the universe has been around far longer than us, far longer than life. All right. But it's also been around for a long time with life involved, which is part of the universe. Life is part of the universe. Life is, right? And there is a truth to life. Right? You can make up things about it. You can make up all the things you want, but if they are in fact not the way it is, then that's not the truth. All right. So the power of the universe is so, the laws of the universe are so beyond our comprehension, frankly, that we just don't even think about it. But we like to laugh at it. We like to spit at it, right? We like to play games with it, meaning, and that's what I mean by truth. So when you talk about the power of truth, in other words, forgive me.
Okay. So we'll be finished in a minute, Steve. Well, we're nearly done.
Is it the what is in someone's life? What actually happened? Okay. I went to war. I was in a country. I did this. I did that. What happened? That's truth. Now, you may come back and remember it differently. You may have done something during that war that you just don't even want to think about. You may want to lie about it and say, no, that didn't happen, this happened. But there was a what is, there was a truth, okay? Those truths are kind of like the truths of the what is of the universe itself. Any truth, I think, has enormous power. And that's why when you say that when you misrepresent the truth, when you lie about it, when you say that what is, what isn't, when you say that something that is something else, just like the laws of the universe, the idea that you'll get away with it, that it'll all work out, okay? is like someone jumping off a 100-story building and saying, you know, I was told by a mystic friend of mine that on a particular day, at a particular time, gravity will simply stop for a while and we'll be able to float like if we were in outer space. And that person told me it would happen on this day at this time. And so I am leaping off this 100-story building, anticipating floating to the ground.
Yeah.
That is essentially denying the truth of the universe in exactly the same way we all the time deny the truth of what is in our life or what has happened in our life. Yeah. The power is kind of the same. And while the effect of dumping off that building was rather dramatic and quick, the effect of denying the truth of our lives or what we have done, what we have said, and what is, still can have a very dramatic effect. Might take longer, but ultimately it is not good. It is painful. Anytime you deviate from what is into whatever the hell you want it to be, you end up paying a price. And there's infinite numbers of these instances. We pay infinite number of prices. You can measure it. It's happening all the time. But we know this, that to the extent that societies, nations, empires, whatever, any groups of people, depart sufficiently from the truth, from what is, making up whatever they want, believing whatever they want, right? And by the way, a lie is a truth. In other words, if someone is lying about something, that is the truth. The truth is they're lying, and that is a what is. That's the real deal, okay? The fact that they lied, that is a truth. That's happening. What they're lying about may not be what is, all right? So even a lie can be the truth in that sense, but one way or another, there is consequences. This is something the human race has been learning for a very long time. It is way far from understanding that. But when it comes to human affairs, they're so complicated that the idea of what is and what isn't and playing around with the truth it's very difficult to assess how it works and how it doesn't. And there's plenty of examples of it worked out great, didn't. But the analogy that I'm making is for a purpose. In other words, by grounding that concept in the laws of the universe itself and understanding what happens when you deny those, like I am above them, I don't believe in them, they don't matter to me, okay? The consequences are rather dramatic and more obvious. And so that's why I like to make that connection. And we literally have people still in our world today that deny the truth of the universe itself. They deny aspects of the reality of this universe as they don't agree with it, doesn't fit my philosophy, not my political perspective, whatever the hell, okay? Because I'll tell you, a virus, as tiny as it is, can be just as destructive as a meteor 15 miles across. It has that kind of power in the right circumstances. And so denying that virus as being not appropriate from my political perspective is the equivalent of yelling at a meteor heading at you from Saturn and saying, I'm sorry, politically, I just don't accept the fact that you're going to impact the Earth. I deny your presence. Go away.
That's a Netflix comedy called Don't Look Up, which I think is it's a very misanthropic comedy, but it's very funny.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, the ET truth embargo is a similar example. So it's okay to disagree if you do it for a rational reason. We can debate things, and that's how we come to the truth. But in the case of the ET presence, it's an act of denial, which is like stepping off a tall building expecting to float gently to the ground. It is like that. As Steve, we've run out of time almost now, so because this has got to fit into my little show. But before we go, people who are not familiar with you will want to know more about you, and you have a website. Is it still the same website, the Paradigm Research Group?
Never changed. ParadigmResearchGroup.org. Okay. You can follow me on Twitter, Paradigm Research Group, or Steve Bassett. You can follow me on Facebook. Okay. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I have an important project that will be announced pretty soon that will be, let me say, it's targeting everywhere, including the UK. I hope people will pay attention and maybe want to support it. We'll see what happens on that. I'm following as closely as possible all the developments related to disclosure. That's my job. That's all I do. Right? And as a result, I have a if you go to my website, you can subscribe up in the upper top of the page, little You can subscribe for free to my newsletter, which goes out from time to time, and particularly goes out if something significant is breaking. So you can subscribe to that. Let's see. I would say it's time for people to finally acknowledge to themselves that this era, this embargo, is coming to an end. And as a result, you need to start thinking about what you're going to be and what you're going to be doing, how you're going to respond to it, what you're going to be doing in the post-disclosure world, maybe a little preparation for it. I don't know. There's a lot of ways one could prepare for this event, knowing that it's coming. That could make it a little more fun for them. I tell people, buy a bigger television. I mean, that'll be good.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going to see the post-disclosure world happening, you want the biggest television possible, because it's going to be hell of a thing, right? In every aspect.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a lot of ways to prepare it, particularly for those that think they'd like to be involved in it. Meaning, okay, disclosure has happened. I want to be part of that. I want to be involved. How can I do? I want to join this organization, start up this organization. I want to run for Congress on a post-disclosure platform, whatever the hell. Now's the time to start thinking about it. It's also important to continue to support everybody in the field that you can, and not jump on the back of the politicians and the DOD right now. Now's a good time to not jump on the back and start whipping them like a horse, but rather telling them how pleased you are with them, praise them. Oh, we like that. We like what you've done. You're coming around. That's excellent. Good for you.
Politicians like that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Nobody wants to be driven. And of course, because of the truth embargo has denied the existence of this all these years, pretty much the political activist movement has been us kind of whacking them on the side of the belly, get going, we want this now, and they're going, who are you and why are you hitting me with that whip? So, I mean, we had no choice. I mean, praise wasn't going to cut it. They laughed at our praise. Now, they're coming around. We're winning, and it's very important to be good winners. I played tennis for many years. And so consequently, I'm very familiar with winning and losing, because if you're a tennis player, you win and lose constantly, okay? A lot more frequently than, say, if you're a soccer player. You only play so many games in a year as a soccer player, but as a tennis player, you can play thousands of matches. And one thing I learned in that era was this. One thing that is worse than a bad loser, and there are people, a lot of people are very bad losers, is a bad winner, right? If I beat somebody and they're upset and they're angry, I get it. You thought you could beat me and you didn't, and you're having a bad day and you lost, and it's not, and you're feeling in a bad mood. But if somebody wins, they win the match, and then they're all pissy and nasty or difficult or whatever. What? That's outrageous. And so one of the things I'm concerned about in the quote world of UFO Twitter, or in general, all of the people that have followed this issue, right, for years, and devoted, and have a lot on the table, and they've done a lot, and deserve all the credit you can muster. One thing I'm concerned is that they may tend toward being bad winners, meaning, okay,
be vainglorious about it.
Yeah. You have this hearing. What wasn't this? It wasn't that good. And I think you're lying, and you're not doing enough. And what the hell's the matter with you? What's the matter with that? And this and that and everything else. And they're winning. They're winning. Okay, so I'm saying, be careful, right? A bad winner is worse than a bad loser, and it also can hurt the process. Okay, it doesn't really help the process.
I think we're seeing that right now, actually. Yeah.
When your opponent starts to acknowledge that you're right, that your position is correct, and that they're willing to come around, that's when you praise them. That's when you show appreciation to them. This is true in every aspect of life, by the way, not just in massive politics. One of the big mistakes that we made, I'm not trying to connect this to the current moment, because a lot of people are connecting it to the current moment, and they're doing it grotesquely, but was at the end of the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union ended, literally disbanded, gave up 14 republics, canceled, outlawed the Communist Party, went full out capitalism and all that. The United States had a choice to be a good winner or a bad winner, and we chose to be a bad winner. In other words, that was when we should have been heaping praise on the new emerging Russia, avoiding the kind of condemnations that were probably either irrelevant or not necessary, and just showing our appreciation that they have done this extraordinary thing. We did not do that. We were a bad winner, right? And as a result, 30 years later, we're staring at the nuclear abyss again. So while that's a pretty strong analogy, and the consequences are pretty severe, but that's also somewhat true. If we are not a good winner, as we win this 75-year race, and the entire governments of the world capitulate to this movement in a sense, then then this post-disclosure world may not go as well as we think. We may not get the cooperation that we would like. We may not get the outcomes we would prefer, because nobody hates. I mean, the only thing that people hate worse than a bad loser is a bad winner, and they really they don't like it at all. It's very bad, and the consequences are hard to measure initially, but I'm starting to see aspects of that develop, and all I can say, folks, you're winning. Enjoy, buy some champagne, get ready to party, keep praising the government's actions and how they go forward, continue to scrutinize and participate, no question, but be generous. This is a big deal.
It's absolutely true, yeah, because we don't know what the post-disclosure world's going to be like. I mean, when I interviewed Andrew Johnson, he explained how some of the technology we've been discussing could be maybe already has been weaponized, and we might have to deal with that. And there's numerous other things that could, even things we haven't even thought of yet, we might have to face. And so this is why I don't get into long discussions about who is or is not a government agent and put into the movement to destroy everything, because basically everyone, including me and you, have been accused of that. And it's kind of an internecine nest of suspicion over UFO Twitter and UAP Twitter. And I'd say that's pointless, as Christina Gomez has pointed out. It's just dragging us down. It really is.
Let me add another analogy, and then we can wrap it up.
Okay.
One, I said I'm talking about my tennis life. A bad winner in tennis happens this way. Oftentimes, the way tennis works is everybody wants to play better players. In other words, the way you get better is you have to play better players, right? You always have to play up, right? Never down. You don't want to play down. Okay, well, that means there's a lot of pressure on the better players that people want to play with them, and they have to say no, and some people are really hard about that. Some are more generous, but overall, that's the hierarchy. Right. So in other words, you want to play better players, but you recognize that other lesser players want to play you, and you sort of spread it out. Okay. And that's the way it goes. All right. So if you play a player that's lesser than you, not as good, and you beat them, and they're upset, and they're a little grumpy and everything else, you sort of understand it, And if they're not too bad about it, a couple of weeks later they may want to play again, and you play them again. Maybe you give them a tip or two. Right. Okay. Look, I tell you what. You're serving too much to the forehand side. You need to, whatever. Okay. Here's what happens with a bad winner. Okay. In other words, you play somebody and they win, and they act like an asshole. You don't play with them again, even though they are better than you, and you could use the workout. The point is, there are other players you can play with. You don't want to play with them again, right? That's so upsetting. It's so irritating. How is that important? Here's the deal. Disclosure is a single truth, basically, at the beginning. It is a single truth. It is, yes, there's an extraterrestrial presence. That's it. That's disclosure, capital D. Needs to come from the President of the United States, all right? Okay, there are all kinds of truths behind that truth, all right? Yeah. So much more we need to know. And so if, in the process of getting that core truth out, right, the truth about the extraterrestrial, we're all pissy about it and irritated about it and demanding about it and not particularly appreciative about it, and it's like, well, you should have told us anyway, and why didn't you tell us, and like, I don't believe you right now, and then blah, 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 blah. Guess what? You get that first truth, but you're going to have to drag the rest of those truths out from them, because they're not going to want to play with you again. It's going to be much harder to get the other information. That truth process just begins with disclosure. It's only the beginning. And so consequently, how we handle these last weeks and months of the truth embargo is going to be very significant in terms of what we get thereafter and how willing they are. If you praise them, if you are appreciative of them, if you show them that telling you the truth really gets you this kind of response, that this is so right, then they're going to want to tell you more truth because they want to get more praise.
That's a very important point, Steve. Yeah, when disclosure happens, how we handle it is going to decide the future of the world. And like I say, you said generous. We've got to be generous. We've got to be reconciliatory rather than condemnatory. And we don't want to start more wars and conflict over this, I think. And this is really great. We're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid, Steve. Otherwise, this won't fit into the show. But thanks very much. I really appreciate you being on here again. Much appreciated, mate.
All right, let's get this whole book thing straightened out, man. I want everything. Give me whatever the hell, and let me read this and find out what you got there. I think you are a candle that is being hidden under a bushel. So let's take care of that, all right?
Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate that. I'll send you the links over, definitely.
Thank you.
It's you take care, and I hope to see you again soon. And let me know when you're coming over to the UK, and I'll meet up with you at Belinda's or somewhere else. And
I'll be back.
Yep, and I'll help you with anything you need to be helped. I'm sure. Check out Steve's interview on the Basis Project as well, which is a recent one, and
another one. Check out, please. I did a pretty strong interview with Jimmy Church, and not too many days ago.
I always, like Steve mentioned his newsletter, subscribe to that newsletter. I always look forward to them when they appear, because I've been subscribed to for years now, and I always look forward to them. So, and all Steve's media spots, including this one, will be on the list there, and you can go to the Paradigm Research Group.
Thanks, and Jimmy Church Radio, he's archived that interview. It's only about 6 days old. A lot of interesting things there. So I hope people will check that out as well. So okay, all right, Ben, I gotta go.
Okay,
until
mate.
Next time.
I'll send you the links over. This show will go live Thursday evening, 8 p.m. UK time, and then it's a podcast. I'll send you those links over.
All right, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Adios. Cheers.
Well, it was really good to talk to Steve Bassett again. I've interviewed him many times. He's a great guy. He's dedicated. He's passionate. We have our differences, of course, but he's one of the people I hold him in higher esteem than almost anyone within the UFO paranormal UFO. What's the word? Exopolitical disclosure movement. I don't think they like the word paranormal very much in that, but I do tend to use it in conjunction. But it's the UFO exopolitical disclosure movement. I think Steve Bassett is one of the best guys in it. Now, I'm sure while we were talking there, you were shouting at the screen saying, "Ben, you don't agree with him on that. He's got that wrong, because Steve goes off onto a number of tangents over certain areas, certain subjects, the Ukraine situation, the old COOF. Several other situations. He goes off on tangents where I have very different views to him, and some of you might be wondering, well, Ben, why don't you say something? Why don't you tell him how he's got it wrong? Well, the reason I didn't challenge him on that is because once he went off onto those tangents and started declaring expressing lots of viewpoints that I have very, very different opinions on, had I challenged him on them, we would have ended up having a debate on those tangents. And that would have completely derailed the conversation I wanted to have with him and diverted it totally away from the central subject matter with which I want to talk to Steve Bassett about and what I brought him onto this program to talk to him about. This is why I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything at the time. It's funny with Steve. He understands the nature of deceit and various deceptions and the duplicity and the craftiness of government. He understands their lack of qualms about defooling us. And when it comes to the UFO issue, he understands that perfectly. But then when it comes to other issues, he's surprisingly mainstream. I'm sure you've noticed that as well. But Steve is Steve. I love the guy. I think he's great. I think he's a good guy. I think he's got a lot of things wrong, but I think he's a good guy. I don't think he's done it out of malice. I think he's misguided, but not immoral. And I think he's a good guy. So who knows what's going to happen next. Anyway, what I'll do now is let's discuss a little bit of the exopolitical news that has emerged since the last video. So what's been happening in the world of UFOs and disclosure, apart from what you've just heard from Steve and myself? Well, I'll turn your attention to this particular image, which is by Thomas Sheridan, and he has reported this bizarre UFO sighting. No, I'm not going to try and imitate his voice. I only do that to people I don't like Steve Mumbling. I do like Thomas. Bizarre UFO sighting, Ireland, March 2022. Artistic representation of the made-of-light craft, which flew over the counties of Sligo and Donegal based on eyewitness accounts. You can see I'm very impressed with it there. This is actually an animation. I'm reproducing a still here under fair use. But this happened on the 1st of March, actually. In which a number of people, not just one person, not just even a handful of people, a large, not even people in one area, a large number of people in an entire region of Ireland reported seeing an unusual spectacle in the sky, which is basically what you see here. This description actually has been recurring, and you see here Thomas Sheridan rendered this animation based on the descriptions. The object was brightly lit and had a regular row of lights along its edge. Now that is a recurring feature with UFOs. For example, the Pentach incident. There's the flying triangles of Belgium in 1990 where there were lights on the corners. You get this happens again and again and again. The lights around the edge of the craft. Regardless of the shape of the UFO, that keeps coming up again and again and again. Now, among the people who actually witnessed was someone who probably most people know and I don't, Tabby Callahan. Now, I'm kind of square, man. I'm not hip. I'm not trendy. I'm not with it. You know, man. I don't watch TV all the time. If I did, I would know that Tabby Callahan is a very famous reality TV star and a rock performer. He was standing outside his house in County Sligo having a smoke when it passed overhead. His partner was a fellow witness. Now, he said it was creepy, shaped like a B-52 Stealth. Now, he probably means the B-2. But made of lights. And see, it is like a B-2 in a way, with the wedge-shaped side of it. That doesn't mean it was the B-52. He said it was huge and silent. Now, a B-52 wouldn't be huge and silent. I thought it was a flock of geese, and I realised very quickly it wasn't. I screamed to Anna to come out quick. I would describe it as an upside-down W, except it looked like it was made of light. It was much lower than even a domestic flight. Now, UFOs are most often completely silent, and sometimes they make a whirring or whining noise. They have been mistaken for flocks of geese before. I mean, this happened with the Lubbock lights. This is because geese often fly in a V formation. The Lubbock lights were explained as a flock of geese that flew over, and a low-light lens actually picked up reflections from street lights below them. This happened in 1951 in the United States. Now, other people in different parts of Ireland saw something strange too. Their descriptions are remarkably similar to Tabby's. In one case, a large group of evening ramblers all saw it, and along with others in County Sligo. There are reports also from Leitrim and Donegal. A broad sweep right across the northwest of Ireland. I was curious to see also if the Irish Aviation Authority made a statement. Now, there was nothing on their website a little while ago. I put in search terms UFO, UAP, they came up blank. But there is an interesting fact which may or may not be related. The IAA, Irish Aviation Authority, released a NOTAM, a notice to airmen, about the closure of airspace in late March for a, quote, security operation, unquote. So what was the UFO? I don't know what it was, but the witness descriptions converge neatly on a profile, and that profile does not resemble any aircraft, bird, weather phenomenon, or an astronomical object that I know of, and I'm keen to see if any other information comes about. If it does, I will write an update on Panama Voice and bring it up on a future video in this series. Now, of course, UFO disclosure would not be UFO disclosure without some news story from Area 51. Now, in 2015, I reported on the construction of a new and enormous aircraft hangar at Area 51. It was situated away from the main Homey Airport campus. You can see it in this image here at the bottom. Now, the reason it was situated away from the main area of Area 51 is probably to do with either security and or safety reasons. Probably something very secret, but also it could use a particularly volatile type of fuel, which could be hazardous. There could be
various toxicity or radiation risks as well. Now, research into this new hangar has given us an amazing update, because there is what looks like an aeroplane that's been spotted near it. You can see it there. And, a satellite photograph shows a black object underneath a hangar tent that is in the middle of assembly, a short distance from the main hangar. The object is black in colour and about 65 feet long, and it has what appears to be delta wings, indicating that it is built for high-speed flight. They have curved edges like the Concorde airliner, which gives it good handling at low speeds as well. The rear of the vehicle is curved, there's no sign of any tail, and tailless designs are quite common among the most modern aeroplanes. The B-2 also has no tail. That was also developed at Area 51. This black object looks very much like the kind of next generation air dominance project. That was a US Air Force proposal to replace the aging Lockheed Martin F-22. And indeed, if you Google it, I won't show you any. Won't show you any pictures, but just Google Lockheed Martin F-22 and next generation air dominance. You'll see pictures of what could be a bit like this. Excuse me. It's actually very likely that the management of Area 51 allowed this image to be captured, because they know what time satellites fly overhead. They have had the experience of the entire space age and Cold War in detecting spy satellites from the Soviet Union, later the Russian Federation, as they orbit overhead with their cameras pointing down, hoping to catch the glimpse of the future enemy aerial threat. So the staff at Area 51 are very adept at moving undercover. Anything they want kept secret until the satellite has gone. And what I suspect is this aircraft was left sitting outside as the satellite passed above. It was done because the government planned to declassify this prototype very soon. And they may even have set up this situation as a kind of publicity stunt to do a bit of viral marketing. Now, I wonder what other secrets are waiting in the wings at Area 51. Probably something a bit more spectacular and extreme than this. And now we come on to Professor Simon Holland. I bet you look at him and you think, is this guy a scientist by any chance? Yeah, now, one of the questions I often ask myself is, how would the skeptics deal with their own beliefs being proven untrue? For example, with UFOs. What will the skeptics say when disclosure happens? And note that I use the future tense there, not the conditional tense. Now, readers of Roswell Rising, a novel of disclosure, available at all good bookshops now, will know that in the fictional scenario I invented for the story, the skeptics all commit mass suicide. Sorry for the spoiler. Now, I actually think that would not happen in real life, and I included it in the plot as a comedic jibe, really aimed at the skeptics. We actually don't have to speculate very much about what they would do, because in some cases we already know, because it's happened to them. And of course, I've mentioned before about Michael Shermer. I brought him up at SUFON. How a skeptic responds depends on the individual. The more arrogant and spiteful among their number, such as Professor Brian Cox, would not have the emotional maturity to endure such a demolition of their ego-fueled world view, and they would probably retire from public life. They'd probably go, I'm going to retire and go away. I'm going to take Gia and the kids, and we're going to go live somewhere where I don't have to see anyone, so I don't have to admit I was wrong, and I don't have to apologise for anyone for calling them knobbers. It'd be something like that. Now, the more genial, the more open-minded, and the more sort of adult among them, like Professor Chris French, Mick West, and that, they will probably honestly swallow their humble pie and admit they were wrong all along. Now, there is a third possibility, and that is that some will attempt to rewrite their own history. They will say something like, I said it was aliens all along, didn't I? I said UFOs were real. I've always said that, haven't I? They will plaintively appeal in that way. Of course, in that situation, people like us will have to remind them that they did in fact not, and we have them on record many times stating so. Don't try to delete your videos, mate. I've downloaded them. Nevertheless, personal historical revisionism is surprisingly effective, even when blatantly contradicted by facts. Now, one science pundit who appears currently to be attempting some kind of controlled transformation is indeed Professor Holland. Now, it's worth go into his channel, actually. I quite enjoy his channel. I quite like the guy. He's a science vlogger on YouTube. He has his fluffy white hair. He has an educated Scottish accent, if that's not a contradiction in terms, and big spectacles. And these ears, I mean, he does look just like a kind of Einstein-like scientist, doesn't he? He's just a perfect image. And he covers many different subjects, and he is interesting. He's really interesting. And sometimes he delves into the weird and esoteric. And he used to have a very staunchly skeptical attitude. He's made many videos. If you just go to his channel, use search to find his UFO videos, put in UFO, you'll find his early ones are very skeptical. But in his more recent material on UFOs, he appears to be changing his views in a very slow and subtle way. In fact, you know, over the last year, in fact, it's taken more than a year, but he's playing a very different tune now. Now, I don't yet know what's going on here. I'm not quite sure what's going on here. Like the one he did this video, which I'll just actually find the title for you. It's all ads. Oh, sorry, ads. It's called Rendlesham UFO Mystery: The Answer, and he comes out with a lot of Richard D. Hall-like stuff. And then he did this other video here. Oh, more ads, and it's called NASA Secrets of UAP, and he talks about Bill Nelson and what he said. Now that's why is it? I don't know yet which camp Professor Holland is falling into, and why. I mean, I don't know. Is his change of mind a natural unconscious drift of opinion caused by new evidence, which is certainly the case with Michael Shermer, as I said in my SUFON talk? Or does he see the writing on the wall, and this is his conscious strategy to bury his past, to slide his way quietly up the starting grid in order to get into pole position before the disclosure bomb finally drops? I think he may be trying to do that, in which case I'll have to go up there and defuse it for him. In fact, I won't be the only one. There'll probably be a very eager queue to say, Simon, baby, come on, mate. We have you on record saying it was all crazy. Why don't you admit you were wrong? We'll see. We'll see what he does. I mean, he may just do what Chris French does and just admit he was wrong. I don't know. We'll find out soon, I think. Our final bit of news for this particular segment of this part of this particular series is, you may remember from I think it may have actually been the previous video, I talked about Andrew Burlington's work, Victor, Nevada, and what he discovered about the strange entrance down by Papoose Lake, the strange structure. Well, there's been another one found. It's this. Now, it all comes down to this test to prove or disprove the testimony of Bob Lazar. Now, what's happened is a YouTuber called UFO Proof claims to have found the real S4 entrance. He gives distinct directions and coordinates on Google Earth. You can find this. You can find this image yourself. And he claims this is the real S4 entrance that Bob Lazar describes. And what's weird is it has the label S4 Research Facility on Google Earth. Now, how that happened, who put it there, I'm not sure. If it really was S4, then I imagine Google would not cooperate with any plan to expose that. If it was, say, someone who works there deciding to do that, or it could be that it was just it's just done for a joke. But Google Earth can be edited by users, and anybody used to be able to upload photographs to it. What's odd is the location is not by Papoose Lake. The researcher says actually the shoreline of the lake has been a red herring all along. The location under discussion is in a range of hills called Cockeyed Ridge that lies about 5 miles to the northwest of Papoose. The site that UFO Proof believes is an entrance consists of a pair of white square structures about 100 feet along each side. It is approached by a road that ends in a circular driveway, as you can see here. Inside the circle is another white block about 40 feet long and 10 wide, and just like the lakeside site that Andrew Burlington discovered, there is a road that terminates at the location. The road twists northwards through the rocky terrain and eventually joins a major junction on the western segment of the Groom Lake Road. The site lies at these coordinates: 37 degrees 9 minutes 33.4 seconds north, 115 degrees 55 minutes 39.2 seconds west. Now, it's not possible to see with the resolution of Google Earth exactly what this facility is. The white structures could be low buildings, although they cast no shadows. It's probably not. They could be the foundations of buildings yet to be built. Alternatively, they could be helicopter landing pads or something else. Either way, the access road is wider than the one leading to the lakeside entrance candidate, and it appears to be better constructed. It could probably handle two-way traffic, indicating that it is regularly visited by vehicles, and that would fit in with Lazar's statement that S4 was a very large underground facility. However, the landscape of the surrounding area does not support his description. Lazar distinctly mentions the doors being at the shore of Papoose Lake. Now that would explain what Andrew Burlington discovered. It also explained Jerry Freeman's report. Do you remember the guy I told you about? The guy who sneaked into Area 51. He was trying to find a lost pioneers trail. That's a fascinating story. I forgot which video was it I told it on. I can't remember. I think it might have been the last one. It was one in this series. Amazing story anyway. But at the moment, I can't tell you what the Google Earth nominated S4 research facility is. But at the same time, I can't see a serious reason to think this is the long sought after Bob Lazar smoking gun. But it's still, I think, should be taken seriously. It should be investigated and treated seriously. It's obviously an anomaly. So maybe again we'll find out at some point, in which case I'll report back.
So what's going to happen next then, I wonder? I really don't know, but there's no way that what we're seeing now would be happening. There's no way that what we're seeing now could possibly happen unless there was some force at work behind the scenes. There's some energy which I can't see. None of us can see it. Maybe no one person can see it. But something highly unusual is happening in this world relating to the UFO UAP issue. Ever since 2017, the whole subject has been turned on its head. A 70-year, literally 70-year and 5-month policy. You could trace it very, 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 very closely back to July of 1947. And then 70 years and 5 months later, in December 2017, that policy was dropped. It was abandoned, it was thrown out, then another one was brought in. Now that's extraordinary. That must have happened for a reason. What the reason is, I'm not sure. And we've been going through fits and starts over this situation, but all through 2018, like I said, we had this kind of hiatus where I thought maybe it was nothing after all. But every time I think that, or someone says that, they say, oh, it's all grinding to a halt. Even Richard Dolan said this. It's now grinding to a halt, this whole thing. Every time that happens, then something suddenly emerges out of the woodwork. Something suddenly some bombshell drops on us. It's almost as if, as Steve said, it's a process. It's almost as if this is a deliberate schedule. It's like different acts, different scenes in the theatre coming in from the actors are coming in and out of the wings. And we're seeing more and more strange things going on. On top of that, you have on top of that the sightings are continuing, and the way they're portrayed in the news, like the incident in Ireland, is totally different. The way people, even famous people like this reality TV star Tabby, what's his name, Callahan, even they're less reticent in speaking out about it. Now that is a very interesting sign, isn't it? So, if you want to know what's going to happen next, just don't ask me exactly what's going to happen next. But I think times they are changing, as the song goes, by Bob Dylan. And I can feel it. And even the skeptics like Simon Holland can feel it now. And they're adjusting their persona to take into account of this. I've got a feeling we are going to come back to this subject very, very soon. This is the second UFO disclosure video for 2022, but it will not be the last. How many more there will be, I don't know yet, but keep watching the channel, you'll find out. Before then, I've got some other videos I want to do. I've got some planned, non-UFO videos as well as a couple of UFO ones. So I'll be doing those in a few days, so keep an eye out for those. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching Hapanwo TV yet again. Hospital Porter's Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.